In our last video we discussed story time, which describes the duration of the action, so for instance in Ulysses, 1 day, and narrative time, which describes how long it takes to recount that action, so in the case of Ulysses, 900 pages. Today I want to look at 4 different relationships that can exist between story time and narrative time. If we imagine a scale that at one end starts with the slowest possible story progression and at the other end has the fastest possible story progression, then we can start by placing the word mimesis in the middle. In mimetic storytelling, the action is shown to us in a scene, which is to say that narrative time equals story time. Things happen in real time, like in a scene from a film. Of course, in books, this equivalency is only conventional, since we all read at different paces. An extract from a scene doesn't correspond to story time in any essential sense, but it gives the impression that we're following the characters in real time. Now, at the slowest end, in terms of story time progression, we have the descriptive pause, where the story stands still while you describe something. Going to the other side of mimesis, well, many authors, particularly those who have earnestly taken on the advice to show rather than tell, are reluctant to break with mimetic storytelling deployed in scenes, but few successful narratives can be told in scenes alone. Diegesis is the form of storytelling where the author or narrator tells us what happens in an overview, summary, or generalization. In a summary, narrative time is less than story time, or is atemporal. And then finally, fastest of all, we have ellipses, where story time progresses but there is no narrative time. For example, if we read that he closed his eyes and fell asleep in the morning, then 8 hours have passed with no words. Ellipses can be explicit when the jump in time is stated, as in 2 years later, or implicit when we're given no direct indication of a change in time. An implicit ellipsis can be indicated by missing a line, but if not used carefully, then of course the implicit ellipsis carries the obvious risk of disorientating your reader. Normally, we go slow and close for the stuff that really matters, and we hurry our way through the stuff that's less important. So authors tend to use descriptive pauses for important moments and ellipses for the stuff that really doesn't matter at all. Of course, there are infinite shades in between these 4 main possibilities. For instance, one can have a slow motion description that's slower than a scene but not quite a descriptive pause. For example, when in Zadie Smith's White Teeth the fate of the characters rests on a coin toss, she writes, "The coin rose and flipped as a coin would rise and flip every time in a perfect world, flashing its light and then revealing its dark enough times to mesmerise a man. Then, at some point in its triumphant ascension, it began to arc, and the arc went wrong, and Archibald turned with the others to watch it complete an elegant swoop toward the pinball machine and somersault straight into the slot." However, I want to identify how Zoe Heller uses descriptive pause, scene, summary and ellipses in her novel Notes from a Scandal. And the bit I want to look at is right near the start when Barbara, the narrator, first meets the other principal character, Sheba. And the chapter begins, "The first time I saw Sheba was on a Monday morning early in the winter of 1996. Now note the declarative first line and how much information it conveys. We know exactly what this episode is about, who the principal characters are, when it happened and where it happened, which is to say at school. She continues, "I was standing in the St George's car park getting books out of the back of my car when she came through the gates on a bicycle, an old-fashioned butcher boy model with a basket in the front." Now, this is a big moment. The whole of the book is going to be about the relationship between these 2 women, so Zoe Heller decides it's time for a descriptive pause. Her hair was arranged in one of those artfully dishevelled updos, a lot of stray tendrils framing the jaw, and something like a chopstick piercing a rough bun at the back. It was the sort of hairstyle that film actresses wear when they're playing lady doctors. And in fact, this descriptive pause goes on for a whole paragraph. Now, the pause has at least 2 functions. It focuses our attention on Sheba and ensures we know that she is going to be key to the story, and it also suggests that the narrator, Barbara, is somewhat obsessive, that even upon first sight, she took more interest in Sheba than is normal. At the end of the descriptive pause, Barbara tells us, "Fey was the word that swam into my mind. Fey person, I thought. Then I locked my car and walked away." Now, Barbara isn't going to re-encounter Sheba until later that afternoon. So how does Heller fill the time in between? Well, because it's of no importance to the story, she inserts an ellipsis. She starts a new paragraph and writes, My formal introduction to Sheba took place later the same day when Ted Mawson, the deputy head, brought her into the staff room at afternoon break for a meet and greet. Now note again that the first sentence of this paragraph tells us exactly what the episode to follow is about. And note how Ted Mawson is introduced. We know who he is from his role and he's going to recur in the story, so it's worth naming him rather than describing him as merely the deputy head. But he's a minor character, and Barbara certainly doesn't waste time describing what he looks like. Next, we get a summary of what the staff room is like at this time, and it's one of my favourite types of summary, a type of summary that many writers neglect. Instead of hearing what happened on that particular day, we learn about repeated behaviour, and we move from the specific to the general. Afternoon break is not a good time to meet school teachers. If you were to plot a graph of a teacher's spirits throughout the school day, afternoon break would be represented by the lowest valley. This summary lasts 2 paragraphs, and it moves from discussing all staff rooms to discussing the staff room at that school to discussing the staff room at that school on that particular day. And the second paragraph ends still summarising when Barbara tells us, I was off in a far corner when Mawson ushered Sheba in, so I was able to watch their slow progress around the room for several minutes before having to mould my face into the appropriate smile. But now the 2 main characters come face to face with each other, and their fateful meeting is imminent. It's a big moment, and Heller decides once again to deploy a descriptive pause. Sheba's hair had become more chaotic since the morning. The loose tendrils had graduated to hanks, and where it was meant to be smooth and pulled back, tiny fuzzy sprigs had reared up, creating a sort of corona around her scalp. And when this paragraph ends, Heller is finally ready to plunge us into a scene. Our new pottery teacher, Mr. Mawson was bellowing with his customary chilling good spirits as he and Sheba loomed over Antonia Robinson, one of our Lit women. Sheba smiled and patted her hair, etc. When we read, we're rarely conscious of how writers are managing time and directing our attention to the stuff that matters. But learning to vary the relationship between story time and narrative time is a key skill for prose writers. Thanks a lot for watching. Good luck with your writing.